How many people are playing Fallout 76 right now? This is a question I've often asked myself. I'm always interested to know player numbers and statistics for the games I play because I love data. I love data because I'm a nerd, and this nerd isn't happy that most gaming companies hide away their player numbers. So I decided I'd try and work out how many people are playing Fallout 76 in August of 2020. What's pushed me to get this video out now is that the Fortifying Atlas Community Challenge is not only ongoing, but has received some changes. Or at least it may have. I've been following the Bethesda events tracker during this community event, and I've become real skeptical about how accurate it may be. I'm going to talk about a reduction to the second goal of the event, which may have actually happened, or may have simply been an error with the site page. I genuinely don't know which is the case now, and the fact the event tracker only seems to update once a day makes the site more of a hindrance than an actual help at this point. Anyway, back to the pre-written and thought out part. For the first part of this challenge, we had to deliver 125 million steel, and the community managed this no problem. After all, steel is abundant, and this was the only new thing to do when patch 21 launched. After acing this, the next challenge was to deliver 150 million concrete, a far harder to gather chunk, but still a possibility if enough players decided to dedicate themselves to the goal. This didn't happen though, and at the time of first drafting this script, the counter was at 12.5 million concrete gathered, and Bethesda moved the target to gathering 15 million concrete. They seemingly removed 90% of the challenge target, and it was still a close call to actually hitting the goal. This change clearly came about as there simply weren't enough people donating materials. I for one stopped donating after day 1, only spending a short amount of time in 76 in order to pick up score and doing nothing else. There weren't any huge incentives to partake in the event, and the collection mechanics were a tad flawed, so it doesn't surprise me that a large portion of the community have decided to ignore this event for the time being. What it got me wondering though was how much junk was Bethesda expecting your average player to deposit? After all, they came up with the target numbers and they know how many people are playing the game. There was likely a conversation about how much junk they would expect each player to donate. Materials are donated 250 at a time, so the number of donations is easy enough to calculate. Simply divide the goal number by 250. This means Bethesda expected steel to be donated 500,000 times, concrete and plastic to be donated 600,000 times, and cork 800,000 times. On the second half of Fortifying Atlas, those numbers jump as high as 1 million junk donations required. Those are some pretty high numbers. If Bethesda expected every player to only donate materials once and thought the goal was achievable, then that would indicate that as many as 1 million people are playing Fallout 76. Of course, that's not a realistic average to go for. Now, I don't know how many times the devs thought players would donate junk, because those jerks keep refusing to let me sit on their meetings. What this means is I have to take an estimate, and I'm going to go for a fairly high average of 10 donations per player would ensure that the goals were met. This would mean that, on average, a Fallout 76 player would deposit 2,500 of each junk. Honestly, I think that's a little high for an average myself, but I assume the devs are optimistic, so let's work with this as a generous estimate. This would then put the estimated player count at 100,000 regularly active Fallout 76 players. 100,000 active players then? That seems like a realistic number to me, but the method of getting there was me taking a guess, a leap, and gluing together a few shreds of vaguely related data. This is not a solid way to get the player numbers, so let's instead take a look at the numbers that are available online. For weeks, I've been looking into this subject, and the main thing I've uncovered is that information on the internet might not always be right. I know, and I'm sorry, I should have given a warning before delivering such a mind-blowing revelation. I'm going to delve into several different sites which claim to have player numbers for 76, and we'll cover how credible they are. First up on the list is Playercounter.com. When I stumbled across this site, I thought I was onto a winner. A site that would give me real-time data I could work with to get a good idea of just how many players 76 has. Doubts came about early as I noticed that the update button seems to just be an RNG generator set between 20 and 40k. There's no way 10,000 players log off or on all at the same time, so the whole counter seemed doubtful to me. I did try to reach out to the people behind the site several times to see if they'd be willing to explain where they were getting their numbers from and how accurate they believe them to be, but I got no reply. So, with no reliable info there, it was article time. I went through a painful number of articles discussing Fallout 76. Very few gave detailed numbers on possible player counts, and most of it did were from the real early days of the game. The best I could really find was from gamersdecide.com, with an article dedicated to Fallout 76 player count. The bulk of this article reads like the wiki, but the one relevant paragraph is this. At the time of this writing, the player count for Fallout 76 is an estimated 22,000 to 34,388 players online for the PC version of the game, with console users for Xbox One and PS4 ranging in an estimated total of 400,000 users across all platforms, showing a decline from the 1.4 million copies sold at launch. Great! Some solid player numbers. Now to just find the citations for the article to check how they got their numbers, and... oh. No sources cited. Absolutely no explanation of how these numbers were gathered. Despite seeming somewhat official, I couldn't find out where these numbers came from. This article is also from the start of the year, so these were the pre-Wastelanders numbers, from around one of the quietest times of the game, which makes these numbers feel a bit off to me. The console to PC split also seems far higher than I'd expect. That's over 90% of the player base on console. While I do believe that Xbox and PlayStation have more players than PC, this ratio split seems to be taking that a bit far. With suspect numbers and a complete lack of any cited sources, I decided to look for a site that actually explains how it gets its numbers. Step forward, Gamstat.com. Despite missing the E from its name, this site does a great job of explaining how it gathers player numbers. They've got a whole page dedicated to explaining how they get their data and work out player numbers. There's plenty of detail given here, but the short version is trophies plus leaks plus maths equals number of players. That is hugely oversimplified, and the dude behind the site does flag that the numbers aren't going to be fully accurate for a few reasons, an especially relevant one for 76 being that the site won't be tracking players who aren't earning new trophies. This is something we'll get back to soon enough. For now, let's just take a look at the numbers Gamstat provides. For PlayStation, the site gives a total player count of 3 million. This may seem pretty high at first. 76 doesn't seem like a game to get 3 million sales just on PS4. This site doesn't track sales though. It tracks players through achievements, meaning someone could pick up 76 on a free weekend, and they would just need to leave Vault 76 for the first time in order to be counted. With that being the case, a few million PlayStation accounts having played 76 for more than a minute seems totally believable. We're not here to find total player numbers for 76 though. Instead we're looking at who's playing right now, and for this we have two figures on the PS4 side. Returning players with new trophies, and new players. Combined, this gives us a figure of 136,000 Fallout 76 players on PS4 for the past month. This information does have a couple of flaws. Those who have already earned all the trophies they're going to earn aren't counted, and that means plenty of long-time 76ers aren't being factored in there. However, it also does factor in anyone who picked up the game one time in a month, got one quick trophy, and then decided the game wasn't for them. For this reason, I'm going to change the result from a solid number to a range of 130,000 to 140,000 PS4 players. With our PlayStation numbers gathered, let's take a gander at Xbox, where there's a handy pre-calculated monthly active users column, which tells us there's 1.1 million players? What? Okay, there's clearly something going on here. Well, it looks like this number also includes PC players who are using Microsoft services? Think I've worked out the issue here. Game Pass. Fallout 76 came to Game Pass on the 9th of July, and would you look at that, 76 gained 670,000 new players on Microsoft platforms from that date on. I'm guessing what's going on here is that every Game Pass user is being added into the number there, so let's subtract those users for now, giving us a new total of 430,000 Xbox and PC players. Problem now is I don't know the split, just how much of that is PC and how much Xbox. Keep in mind that the PC version of 76 can be purchased through the Bethesda launcher, Steam, or the Microsoft Store. So is this number just counting the Microsoft Store, or is the data coming from anyone signed into Windows? I'm personally inclined to believe it's the latter, given how high the number is. In which case, I guess we've got the numbers needed. Add them together and it's about 565,000 people who have been playing Fallout 76 during the past month. That doesn't seem right to me. At least not for people playing this game regularly. My own personal estimate I gave for regular players was less than a fifth of this new number. My estimates did come from assuming Bethesda staff thought your average player would deposit 2,500 of each junk for a challenge though. If we take that new number and make it so each player only deposits junk once, then we'd have 141,250,000 of each junk being deposited. All of a sudden, having to deposit 125 to 200 million of a particular type of junk seems like a sensible number. But 500,000 players just doesn't fit with the narrative of 76 being this terrible game that everyone hates. It kind of makes it look like the game is doing alright. Certainly not a trailblazer, but not as bad as a lot of us would expect. I have spent too much time trying to work this out. I've looked at what little sale data was available, followed links to pages that no longer exist, read comments from members of the community who give wildly different player count numbers, and stressed myself to an unhealthy degree to get a rough total of about 500,000 currently active 76 players, maybe? And even then, I don't know if I should believe the result I've landed on. What I think is the case with 76 is that it's not a game that gets a lot of people super excited, but it's likely a game that plenty of people play incredibly casually, dropping in maybe a few times a month for a long play session, or, like myself, most days for a very brief session just to get the daily sorted. It also doesn't reflect how many humans are playing, as plenty of people have multiple accounts for the game, or maybe play on console and PC at the same time, meaning they'll count twice. Man, I am really struggling to accept the conclusion on the player count, and I'm the one who's making this video. I really don't know what to expect in the comments of this, as I feel like very few people are going to agree with the numbers as listed here. It's worth keeping in mind that this is a very roughly hewn estimate. The only real way to know just how many people are playing the game is for Bethesda to release the numbers, but that's not going to happen. As I said at the start of the video, gaming companies tend to hide away their player numbers, so we're all left staring at paint drops and trying to see the full picture from them. Until gaming companies are willing to become more transparent with their data, we're never going to have a true number to look at, and that honestly makes me a little sad. Weeks of work have left me feeling empty with the end result, because I know it's not accurate. It gives a better estimate than most places I came across, but it's still not the level of accuracy I wish I could give all of you. I have to put this video to bed now though. I could continue to dig for information for months, but this video is already going to be one of the worst in terms of pay per hours worked. Which is why I want to offer up a huge heartfelt thank you to my patrons. Videos like these are only made possible because I have people supporting me over on Patreon. Each month they donate $1 or more, and that results in me being able to work on crazy projects like these, rather than making every other video, Sarge tries to get another fixer from the purveyor. If you're more of a fan of this kind of content, then please do consider becoming a patron. You don't need to throw money at me to support the channel though. Leaving a like, sharing these sorts of videos, and making sure you've subscribed with notifications on all help the channel to grow. Who knows, maybe one day I'll be one of those YouTubers with a fancy silver play button. That's more than long enough for an outro at this point, so let's end things the same way every video ends. As always, thanks for watching. Sarge out.